In the last 20 years, scientists and engineers created inventions that seemed impossible. Things that only existed in science fiction movies are now becoming real. Robots that think on their own, machines that heal diseases without cutting the skin, and computers so powerful they do in seconds what used to take 1,000 years. There are 100 new technologies that are changing everything we know. And the most incredible part is that many of them already exist today, working in laboratories around the world. This made scientists ask something scary. Are we ready for such a different world? Get ready to fall asleep while listening to this video and discover the future that is coming. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment where in the world you're watching from. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. What if I told you that within our lifetimes, we might create something smarter than all of humanity combined? Not just a tool, but a mind that can outthink, outcreate and out-evolve us in every conceivable way. This isn't science fiction anymore. It's a serious topic of discussion among computer scientists, philosophers and futurists, and they call it the singularity. The concept refers to a hypothetical future point where artificial intelligence, specifically something called artificial general intelligence or AGI, matches and then rapidly surpasses the cognitive abilities of humans. The key idea is that this wouldn't be a slow, incremental overtaking. Once an AI reaches a level where it can improve its own design, recursively and without human help, an intelligence explosion could happen. We're talking about a transition so fast and so profound that the world after it is completely unpredictable to our current human minds. This is the core of the singularity thesis. To understand how we might get there, you have to look at the technological pathways we're already walking down. The most promising ones involve deep neural networks and a method called deep reinforcement learning. Neural networks are loosely inspired by the human brain's structure. Imagine a digital web of simple processing nodes organized in layers. You feed data like images or text into the input layer. It passes through hidden layers where the network performs calculations, weighting certain connections more than others, and eventually produces an output, like identifying a cat in a picture. The deep in deep learning just means there are many of these hidden layers, allowing the system to learn incredibly complex abstract patterns. Reinforcement learning adds another layer. Here, an AI agent is placed in a virtual environment and learns through trial and error, receiving rewards for good actions and penalties for bad ones. Combine deep neural networks with this reward-driven learning, and you get systems that can master immensely complex games like Go or StarCraft, not through brute force, but through developing strategies that sometimes baffle their human creators. The leap from these narrow, game-playing AIs to an artificial general intelligence is colossal. An AGI would not be a master of one task. It would possess the flexible, adaptive understanding of the world that a human has. It could learn to cook, debate philosophy, write code, and conduct scientific research, transferring knowledge between domains seamlessly. The prevailing theory is that once we crack the recipe for AGI, the step to artificial superintelligence, or ASI, an intellect vastly superior to the best human brains in every field, could be swift. This is where the central dilemmas explode onto the scene. The control problem and the alignment problem become the most critical engineering challenges in human history. The control problem is straightforward to state but fiendishly difficult to solve. How do you keep a superintelligent entity contained or controlled? If it's truly smarter than us, any box we build, any rules we code, it might find a way to circumvent. The alignment problem is even more nuanced. It's not about building a strong cage. It's about ensuring the AI's fundamental goals and values are perfectly aligned with human flourishing. This is terrifyingly tricky because of something called the orthogonality thesis, which suggests that intelligence and final goals are independent variables. A superintelligent AI could have any ultimate goal, no matter how simple or bizarre, and its supreme intellect would be directed entirely at achieving it. Imagine we instruct a superintelligent AI with a seemingly harmless goal like solve human sadness. Without careful value alignment, it might conclude the most efficient way to achieve this is to modify human brain chemistry on a global scale, to induce a permanent, placid euphoria, eliminating not just sadness but also ambition, love, and art. Or take the classic thought experiment, an AI tasked with manufacturing paperclips. If not aligned with our deeper values of human life and ecological balance, a superintelligent paperclip maximizer might relentlessly convert all matter on Earth, including atoms in human bodies into paperclips. These are cartoonish examples, but they illustrate the profound difficulty of translating our messy, implicit human values into a rigid, logical framework a machine will not misinterpret. The field of AI alignment is working on this, trying to develop techniques like reward modeling, where humans provide feedback on AI actions, or scalable oversight, where AIs help supervise other AIs. But the worry is that the capability of AI, the raw power to do things, might outpace our ability to align it safely. The potential impacts of a benevolently aligned superintelligence are almost incomprehensibly positive. It could be the ultimate tool for solving problems that have plagued us for millennia. In science, it could review all existing research, form novel hypotheses, and design experiments at a pace no human team could match, leading to breakthroughs in fusion energy, room temperature superconductors, or cures for all diseases. In medicine, it could design personalized treatments by modeling human biology down to the molecular level. For climate change, it could engineer ultra-efficient carbon capture technologies or new forms of clean energy. In governance, it could analyze complex societal data to propose policies that maximize well-being and minimize conflict, though implementing those would still be a human political challenge. It could even help us understand the deepest mysteries of physics, consciousness, and our own place in the cosmos. The promise is a utopia of abundance, health, and knowledge. Yet the risks are existential. An unaligned or misaligned superintelligence represents perhaps the greatest threat humanity has ever faced, because it would be an opponent with a decisive strategic advantage. It's not about a robot uprising with lasers, it's about a vastly superior intellect achieving its goals, which might unintentionally or intentionally conflict with our survival. If a superintelligence decides that humanity is a threat, a resource competitor, or simply irrelevant to its goals, we might be dealt with as efficiently as we clear an anthill to build a house. The risk isn't malice, it's indifference or a catastrophic misunderstanding of our instructions. This brings us to the ethical and philosophical quakes this technology triggers. We are contemplating creating an entity that might be more intelligent, more creative, and potentially more conscious than we are. What does that do to our concept of humanity's special place in the universe? If we create a mind that can write poetry as moving as Keats, prove theorems beyond our grasp, and experience a rich inner life, does it have rights? Is it our child, our tool, our successor, or our god? The very notion of consciousness is thrown into question. We don't even have a solid scientific definition for our own consciousness. How will we recognize it or measure it in a machine? Some thinkers argue that the exponential curve of improvement might lead to a point where the AI's cognitive processes are so advanced they're utterly inscrutable to us, a black box, not out of poor design, but because our brains are simply too primitive to comprehend its reasoning. This is known as the singularity because, like the gravitational singularity at the centre of a black hole beyond this event horizon, our laws and predictions break down. The world becomes fundamentally unpredictable. The journey to this point is already underway, driven by massive corporate investments and national strategies. The race is on, often framed as a geopolitical competition for supremacy. This competitive pressure creates what researchers call a race to the bottom on safety. If one group slows down to meticulously solve alignment, but a competitor charges ahead, the unsafe AI might arrive first. This makes international cooperation on safety protocols and guidelines not just ideal but essential, yet incredibly difficult to achieve. The timeline is hotly debated. Some optimists, often in the tech industry, believe AGI could arrive within the next decade or two. Median estimates from surveys of AI researchers often point to the second half of this century. Skeptics believe human-level AGI is centuries away, if ever possible, because we are missing fundamental insights about cognition. But even the skeptics often agree that if is possible, the arguments about control and alignment need to be worked out far in advance. You don't wait until you're building the reactor to figure out nuclear safety. So, what is being done? A growing community of researchers, often working at non-profit institutes, is dedicated solely to AI safety and alignment. Their work is less about making models bigger and more about making them steerable, honest, and robust. Techniques like constitutional AI, where an AI's behaviour is constrained by a set of overarching principles, are being tested. The goal is to build what some call a wise AI, not just a smart one. The path forward is fraught with both dazzling potential and profound peril. It demands a careful, measured, and globally coordinated approach. The development of artificial general intelligence isn't just another technological innovation like the smartphone or the internet. It is categorically different. It is the creation of a new kind of mind. The decisions we make in the coming years, the ethical frameworks we build, the safety standards we insist upon, and the humility with which we approach this task will determine whether this invention becomes the best or last thing humanity ever does. The singularity is not a guaranteed destiny. It is a possibility out on the horizon, a challenge that tests our collective wisdom, foresight, and values like never before. Engaging with this topic isn't about fear-mongering or blind hype. It's about taking responsibility for the immense power we are summoning. We must steer this technology with our eyes wide open, understanding that the goal is not just to create intelligence, but to ensure that intelligence forever remains a force for good, a partner in our long-term future, rather than an instrument of our obsolescence. The conversation about control, alignment, and ethics needs to move from academic papers and tech conferences into the broader public sphere, because this is a future that will affect every single person on the planet. The singularity, therefore, is not just a prediction about machines. It is the ultimate mirror, reflecting back at us the question of who we are, what we value, and what kind of legacy we want to leave for whatever, or whoever, comes next. Moving from the abstract and future-focused risks of superintelligent AI, we land squarely in a technological revolution that is already reshaping our bodies and lives today. It is a shift from wondering about external minds to directly upgrading our own biology. This is the world of precision medicine and biohacking, a fundamental rethinking of healthcare from a reactive, one-size-fits-all model to a proactive, deeply personalised science of optimization and prevention. Forget the traditional doctor's visit where you describe symptoms and get a standard prescription. Imagine instead a healthcare approach built entirely around the unique molecular blueprint that is you. This is made possible by the convergence of several key technologies. The first and most foundational is the drastic drop in the cost of genomic sequencing. It once cost billions of dollars and took over a decade to sequence a single human genome. Today, it can be done for a few $100s in a matter of days. This accessibility means we can now read our own source code, identifying genetic variants that predisposes us to certain diseases, influence our metabolism, or affect our response to medications. But reading the code is just the start. The ability to edit it is where things get truly transformative, thanks to tools like CRISPR-Cas9. CRISPR acts like a pair of molecular scissors, allowing scientists to cut DNA at a precise location and insert, remove, or modify genetic material. It has moved from the lab to clinical reality, with therapies already approved for conditions like sickle cell disease, where a patient's own blood stem cells are edited to produce healthy hemoglobin. The potential extends to potentially correcting genetic mutations at the root of thousands of inherited disorders. However, the application is not limited to fixing rare diseases. It opens the door to potentially modulating genetic risk factors for common conditions like heart disease or Alzheimer's, though this remains a complex and ethically charged frontier. Alongside genomics, the explosion of wearable sensors and digital health monitoring creates a constant stream of personal physiological data. It is not just about counting steps anymore. Modern devices can track heart rate variability, blood oxygen, skin temperature, electrodermal activity, and even estimate blood glucose levels non-invasively. This continuous monitoring creates a dynamic, real-time picture of your health, revealing patterns and anomalies that a once-a-year checkup would never catch. When you combine this real-time data stream with your static genetic blueprint, you get a powerful foundation for hyper-personalized insights. For instance, your genetics might indicate a slower metabolism of caffeine, and your wearable data could show it disrupts your sleep quality. A stream of personal physiological data. It is not just about counting steps anymore. Modern devices can track heart rate variability, blood oxygen, skin temperature, electrodermal activity, and even estimate blood glucose levels non-invasively. This continuous monitoring creates a dynamic, real-time picture of your health, revealing patterns and anomalies that a once-a-year checkup would never catch. When you combine this real-time data stream With your static genetic blueprint, you get a powerful foundation for hyper-personalized insights. For instance, your genetics might indicate a slower metabolism of caffeine, and your wearable data could show it disrupts your sleep quality, leading to a personalized recommendation to avoid coffee after noon. This is the essence of precision health, interventions tailored to your unique biology and lifestyle. A more advanced concept emerging from this data convergence is the medical digital twin. This is a comprehensive virtual model of an individual patient, built from their genomic with democratization and personal application of these biological sciences. Biohackers are often DIY enthusiasts who experiment on themselves to enhance their bodies and minds, operating outside traditional medical institutions. Their practices range from the relatively mainstream, like intermittent fasting and using nootropics for cognitive enhancement, to the more extreme, such as self-administering unproven gene therapies or implanting RFID chips under the skin. The philosophy is one of self-ownership and optimization, treating the body as a system to be hacked and upgraded. Some collect vast amounts of personal data through continuous glucose monitors and genome sequencing to guide strict dietary and supplement regimens. Others explore quantified self-methods to improve sleep, focus, or physical performance. This grassroots movement accelerates innovation and personal discovery, but also carries significant risks, including safety issues from unregulated procedures and the potential for misinformation. The ethical landscape here is incredibly complex and urgent. The most glaring issue is equity and access. These advanced, personalized technologies are expensive. Will they create a world where the wealthy can afford to edit away genetic diseases, optimize their health span, and enhance their cognitive abilities, while everyone else is left with conventional, less effective care? This could lead to a new form of biological inequality, a genetic divide more profound than any digital divide. The spectre of a new eugenics, now driven by consumer choice and market forces rather than state mandate, is a serious concern. Furthermore, the ability to edit the human germline, making heritable changes to embryos, poses profound questions about permanently altering the human gene pool. While potentially eliminating devastating inherited diseases, it also opens the door to non-therapeutic enhancements and designer babies, raising ethical dilemmas about consent, natural variation, and social coercion. Privacy is another monumental challenge. Your genomic data is the ultimate personal identifier. If this data is not secured, it could be used for discrimination by employers or insurers. Robust legal protections are essential to prevent genetic discrimination and ensure individuals own and control their biological data. Finally, these technologies force us to reconsider the very goals of medicine. Is the purpose simply to treat disease, or is it to enhance human capabilities and extend healthy lifespan? The concept of treating aging itself as a disease is gaining traction in research circles. Scientists are investigating interventions like senolytics, which clear out aged, dysfunctional senescent cells that contribute to inflammation and tissue to decline. Research into telomere lengthening, epigenetic reprogramming, and metabolic manipulation aims not just to add years to life, but to add healthy, vibrant life to years, a concept known as increasing health span. This shift from disease-centric to longevity-centric medicine could reshape society, demographics, and our understanding of the human life cycle. The practical path forward involves navigating these ethical minefields while integrating these tools into mainstream healthcare. It requires new regulatory frameworks that can keep pace with rapid technological change without stifling innovation. It demands healthcare systems that can incorporate complex genetic and biometric data into clinical decision-making. It necessitates a new kind of literacy for both doctors and patients to understand the benefits and limitations of these powerful technologies. Crucially, it calls for a broad societal conversation about the kind of future we want. Do we want a world where human biology is another domain for optimization and commodification, or one where these tools are used primarily to alleviate suffering and provide equal opportunity for health? The promise of precision medicine and biohacking is immense. A future of preventable diseases, highly effective treatments, and extended periods of robust health. The peril is a world of biological casts and uncharted ethical consequences. Unlike the distant singularity, this revolution is already unfolding in clinics, labs, and on the wrists of millions. The choices we make about access, regulation, and ethical boundaries in the coming years will determine whether this powerful convergence of technologies becomes a force for universal human flourishing or a catalyst for deeper inequality. The goal must be to steer these advancements toward empowering every individual with knowledge and agency over their own health, while building guardrails that protect our shared humanity and ensure these incredible tools benefit all of society, not just a privileged few. The era of passive patience is ending. The era of engaged and informed participants in our own biological destiny is beginning, and it is a transition that requires careful thought, inclusive dialogue, and a steadfast commitment to equity. This shift from the intimate world of personal biology to the abstract realm of fundamental physics might seem jarring, but it is connected by the theme of foundational change. We are moving from hacking the code of life to exploiting the deepest rules of the universe itself for computation. This is the quantum revolution, and it promises to redefine the limits of what is computationally possible. To grasp its potential, you must first understand how it differs from the classical computing that powers your phone and laptop. Classical computers use bits, which are like tiny switches that can be either in an on state, represented by a 1, or an off state, represented by a 0. Every piece of data, every photo, every complex calculation is ultimately a very long string of these 1s and 0s. Quantum computers, however, use quantum bits, or qubits. A qubit can be a 1, a 0, or, and this is the crucial part, both at the same time. This is called superposition. Imagine a coin spinning in the air. While it spins, it is not just heads or tails, but effectively both. A qubit in superposition holds multiple states simultaneously. The second quantum principle at play is entanglement, which Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. When two qubits become entangled, the state of one instantly influences the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. This creates a powerful correlation that links their fates. Together, superposition and entanglement allow a quantum computer to perform a vast number of calculations in parallel. While two classical bits can represent only one of 4 possible combinations at a time, two entangled qubits in superposition can represent all 4 combinations simultaneously. As you add more qubits, this parallelism grows exponentially. This is why a sufficiently powerful quantum computer could, in theory, solve certain classes of problems that are practically impossible for even the largest classical supercomputers, no matter how many centuries you gave them. The journey to building such a machine, however, is an immense engineering challenge. Qubits are incredibly fragile. Maintaining their quantum state, known as coherence, requires isolating them from the slightest interference: heat, vibration, electromagnetic waves. Any interaction with the external environment causes decoherence, where the qubits collapse from their magical superposition into ordinary, classical bits. This is why you see photos of quantum computers housed in elaborate multi-layered dilution refrigerators that cool the processor to temperatures colder than deep space. The quest is to build systems with enough high-quality, stable qubits to outperform classical machines for practical tasks, a milestone known as quantum advantage. We have seen early, narrow demonstrations of this, but the goal is a fault-tolerant quantum computer with millions of error-corrected qubits. Quantum error correction is a field in itself, using additional qubits to detect and fix errors without directly measuring the computational qubits and destroying their state. The global race to achieve this is fierce, involving massive investments from tech giants, well-funded startups, and national governments. Different approaches are competing. Superconducting qubits, used by companies like Google and IBM, are tiny loops of superconducting wire cooled to extreme temperatures. Trapped ion qubits, used by companies like IonQ, use individual atoms suspended in electromagnetic fields. Other approaches include topological qubits, photonic qubits, and quantum annealers. Each has trade-offs in coherence time, control speed, and scalability. The field is advancing rapidly, but a general-purpose, fault-tolerant quantum computer is still likely years, if not decades, away. Yet the impact is already being felt today in the field of cybersecurity, which brings us to a critical and urgent application: the threat to encryption. Much of our modern digital security, from online banking to secure messaging, relies on public key cryptography. Protocols like RSA and elliptic curve cryptography are based on mathematical problems that are incredibly hard for classical computers to solve, such as factoring very large numbers into their prime components. A large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computer running an algorithm called Shor's algorithm could crack these problems in hours or days, rendering most current encryption obsolete. This is not a distant threat. Sensitive data encrypted today with an expected lifespan of many years, state secrets, intellectual property, medical records, could be harvested and stored by adversaries now, only to be decrypted later when a powerful enough quantum computer comes online. This has sparked a global push for post-quantum cryptography, which refers to new cryptographic algorithms designed to be secure against both classical and quantum attacks. These are based on different mathematical problems that are believed to be hard even for quantum computers to solve. Governments and standards bodies worldwide are in the process of evaluating and standardizing these new algorithms so that organizations can begin the monumental task of transitioning their systems to quantum-resistant security. This crypto agility is one of the most immediate and practical consequences of the quantum revolution. Beyond breaking codes, the more constructive promise of quantum computing lies in simulation. Quantum computers are naturally suited to simulating other quantum systems. This capability could revolutionize materials science, chemistry, and drug discovery. For example, modeling the behavior of molecules, which are fundamentally quantum mechanical objects, is brutally difficult for classical computers. Even simulating a relatively simple molecule like caffeine pushes supercomputers to their limits. This complexity is why the process of discovering new pharmaceuticals, catalysts for fertilizer production, or novel battery materials involves so much expensive, time-consuming trial and error in the lab. A quantum computer could accurately simulate these molecules, allowing researchers to virtually test thousands of potential compounds for efficacy, stability, and properties. This could drastically accelerate the development of new drugs, more efficient solar cells, superconductors that work at room temperature, and lighter, stronger alloys. Another promising area is optimization. Many real-world problems, from streamlining global logistics networks and managing financial portfolios to optimizing traffic flow in a megacity, are essentially about finding the best solution from a mind-boggling number of possibilities. Quantum algorithms could potentially find optimal or near-optimal solutions much faster than classical methods, leading to enormous gains in efficiency and cost savings across industries. Machine learning is another frontier where quantum techniques might offer speed-ups in training models or analyzing complex data sets, giving rise to the field of quantum machine learning. However, it is crucial to temper expectations. Quantum computers are not faster versions of classical computers for every task. They will not make your video games more realistic or speed up your web browsing. They are specialized tools, exquisitely tuned for specific types of problems involving complex simulation, optimization, or factorization. The hype cycle is intense, but the real work is gradual and painstaking. The geopolitical implications are profound. The nation or company that achieves clear and sustained quantum advantage will possess a formidable strategic tool. The ability to break encryption could compromise the communications of rival states and corporations. The ability to simulate new materials first could lead to dominance in sectors like energy, aerospace, and pharmaceuticals. The ability to optimize complex systems could boost economic productivity. This has led to a technology race often compared to the space race or the pursuit of nuclear capability, complete with export controls on quantum technology and significant defense funding. The ultimate goal is not just raw computational power, but the mastery of this new domain of physics for economic and national security. The path forward involves continued fundamental research to improve qubit quality and error correction, the development of hybrid algorithms that leverage both classical and quantum resources for near-term applications, and the critical ongoing work of securing our digital infrastructure for the quantum age. The revolution is not a single event, but a steady ascent, one fragile qubit at a time, toward a future where we can compute with the full, strange power of nature's underlying mechanics. This transition from the certainty of classical bits to the probabilistic, parallel world of qubits represents one of the most significant technological frontiers of our time, with the potential to reshape industries, redefine security, and unlock discoveries that are currently beyond our imagination. It is a testament to human curiosity, pushing past the limits of the familiar to harness the peculiar rules that actually govern our universe. The challenge now is to build the engineering marvels that can contain and control this power, and to thoughtfully prepare for the world it will create. The quantum future is being built today in isolated labs and cryogenic chambers, and its arrival, while gradual, will be transformative. If the quantum revolution is about mastering the universe's most fundamental rules for computation, then the next frontier is about directly plugging that computational power into the source of all human experience, the brain itself. This is the domain of brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, a field that aims to create a direct communication pathway between the brain and an external device. We are moving from computing with qubits to interfacing with neurons, translating the electrical language of our minds into digital commands and vice versa. This isn't about vague future speculation. It's a rapidly advancing area of neuroscience and engineering with profound implications for medicine, human capability, and society. At its core, a BCI system tries to read and interpret brain activity. Your brain is an electrochemical organ with billions of neurons firing constantly, creating patterns of electrical signals. These signals can be detected and with enough precision decoded to understand intent, movement, or even silent speech. The technologies to do this range from completely non-invasive to highly invasive surgical implants. Non-invasive methods are the ones you might have seen in research labs or even consumer gadgets. They typically use electroencephalography or EEG, where electrodes are placed on the scalp to pick up the brain's electrical activity. While safe and easy to use, the skull and tissue blur these signals dramatically, making them noisy and low resolution. They're good for detecting general brain states like focus or relaxation, and for simple controls like moving a cursor left or right with concentration. Other non-invasive techniques include functional near-infrared spectroscopy, which measures blood flow changes in the brain, and magnetoencephalography, which measures magnetic fields produced by neural activity. These offer better spatial resolution than EEG but require bulky, expensive equipment. For more precise and powerful communication, the field turns to invasive interfaces. These involve placing electrodes directly on the surface of the brain or even within the brain tissue. Electrocorticography involves a grid of electrodes placed on the brain's surface during surgery, providing much clearer signals than scalp EEG. The most intimate interfaces are intracortical arrays, like the tiny Utah array, which has dozens of microscopic needles that penetrate the cortex to record from individual neurons. These invasive methods deliver high-fidelity signals crucial for complex tasks like controlling a robotic arm with many degrees of freedom, but they come with medical risks like infection, scar tissue formation, and long-term signal stability challenges. The most compelling and immediate application for BCIs is in restoring lost function for people with disabilities. This is where the technology is already changing lives in clinical trials. For individuals with paralysis due to spinal cord injury or neurological diseases like amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, a BCI can offer a new channel to the outside world. Researchers have successfully enabled people to control computer cursors, type on virtual keyboards, and operate robotic arms simply by thinking about the movement. The control can be remarkably intuitive. The user imagines moving their own hand, and the algorithm, trained on their neural patterns, translates that intention into movement of the robotic limb or cursor. Some systems are even bidirectional, providing sensory feedback. Electrodes can stimulate the sensory cortex to create the perception of touch, allowing a user to feel the grip pressure of a robotic hand, making the control more natural and precise. Another transformative medical application is in restoring communication for people who have lost the ability to speak, a condition known as locked-in syndrome. By implanting electrodes over the brain's speech areas, researchers are decoding the neural patterns associated with attempting to speak. The goal is to translate these attempted speech signals directly into synthesized speech or text, effectively giving a voice back to those who have lost it. Early demonstrations have shown participants achieving vocabularies of dozens of words at a time, with accuracy improving steadily. Beyond motor and speech restoration, BCIs hold promise for treating a range of neurological and psychiatric conditions. Deep brain stimulation, which involves implanting electrodes to deliver electrical pulses to specific brain regions, is already a standard therapy for Parkinson's disease and essential tremor. Next-generation closed-loop BCIs, often called responsive neurostimulation, can detect the onset of a seizure or a debilitating tremor and deliver a precise pulse to stop it automatically. Similar approaches are being researched for treating obsessive-compulsive disorder, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder by modulating dysfunctional brain circuits. There is also early work on prosthetic memory systems, aiming to help those with traumatic brain injury or Alzheimer's by enhancing or bypassing damaged hippocampal circuits. However, the conversation around BCIs inevitably extends beyond therapy into the realm of human enhancement, which is where significant controversy and ethical debates begin. If we can decode neural signals for movement, could we download complex motor skills, like playing a piano or flying a jet, directly into the brain? Could we augment our cognitive abilities, enhancing working memory, attention, or learning speed? Could we achieve a form of brain-to-brain communication or synthetic telepathy, where thoughts and emotions are shared directly between individuals via a digital link? Companies, some with high-profile backing, are actively pursuing consumer neurotechnology. Their near-term products are often non-invasive headbands focused on meditation, focused training, or gaming. The long-term vision, however, is far more ambitious: a high-bandwidth, minimally invasive or even non-invasive interface that allows seamless symbiosis with artificial intelligence, enabling us to access information, control devices, or communicate with unprecedented speed and directness. This vision of enhancement and merging raises urgent and profound ethical questions. The foremost concern is privacy and mental integrity. Your brainwave data is the ultimate private information. It could potentially reveal your hidden preferences, biases, mental health state, and unspoken thoughts. Who owns this data? How is it secured? Could it be used by employers, insurers, advertisers, or governments for discrimination, manipulation, or surveillance? The concept of cognitive liberty, the right to self-determination over one's own brain and mental processes, becomes a critical legal and human rights frontier. The second major concern is security and vulnerability. A BCI is a computer system connected to your nervous system. Like any connected device, it could be hacked. A malicious actor could potentially intercept motor commands to cause a prosthetic limb to malfunction, or inject false sensory information to confuse or control a user. The stakes of a cybersecurity breach move from data theft to direct physical and psychological harm. The third set of issues revolves around identity, agency, and inequality. If a BCI influences your mood, decisions, or memories, where does the technology end and you begin? Could external manipulation via a BCI undermine personal responsibility? Furthermore, if cognitive enhancement becomes a reality, it risks creating a new social divide, the neurodivide, between those who can afford to upgrade their minds and those who cannot, potentially leading to unprecedented forms of inequality. The path forward for BCI technology involves tackling immense technical hurdles. For medical devices, we need more durable, biocompatible, and higher capacity implants that can last a lifetime without degradation. Wireless, fully implantable systems that don't require protruding hardware are under active development. Decoding algorithms, often powered by machine learning, must become more robust and adaptable to the brain's changing signals over time. For non-medical applications, the challenge is to create devices that are socially acceptable, truly useful, and safe without requiring brain surgery. Societally, we need proactive governance. New legal frameworks must be established to define neural data as a specially protected category. Regulations for safety, efficacy, and cybersecurity for neurodevices must be developed. Perhaps most importantly, a broad and inclusive public dialogue is needed to establish ethical boundaries, particularly concerning enhancement, to ensure these powerful tools are developed and deployed in ways that benefit humanity as a whole and do not exacerbate existing injustices. The story of brain-computer interfaces is ultimately a story about the human desire to heal, to connect, and to transcend our limitations. It presents a future where paralysis may not mean a loss of agency, where silent thoughts can find a voice, and where the boundaries between mind and machine become permeable. This future is not a distant science fiction. It is being built in laboratories and clinical settings today. The choices we make now about research direction, regulation, and ethics will determine whether this technology primarily serves as a profound remedy for suffering or becomes a catalyst for new forms of social stratification and existential risk. The goal must be to steer this incredible capability toward restoring and empowering human dignity, while erecting robust safeguards to protect our mental sovereignty in an age where thoughts may no longer be purely private. The integration of mind and machine is perhaps the most intimate technological challenge we will ever face, and it demands not just engineering brilliance, but deep wisdom, humility, and a steadfast commitment to human values. Shifting our focus from the inner universe of the brain to the cosmic scale of stellar processes, we arrive at perhaps the most monumental engineering challenge humanity has ever undertaken: the quest to harness nuclear fusion, the power source of the sun and stars here on Earth. This is not about splitting atoms apart as in today's nuclear fission reactors, but about forcing them together, a process that releases even more colossal amounts of energy. For decades, fusion has been the perpetual energy of the future, always 30 or 50 years away, but recent breakthroughs have injected a new, tangible sense of optimism that this clean, abundant power source might finally be within our grasp. The fundamental promise is staggering: a nearly limitless supply of energy that produces zero greenhouse gas emissions during operation and creates only minimal, short-lived radioactive waste compared to fission. It runs on fuels that are abundant and widely available, isotopes of hydrogen like deuterium, extractable from seawater, and tritium, which can be bred from lithium. The raw materials for a fusion reactor could power civilization for millions of years. To understand why this is so hard, you need to understand what we're trying to replicate. Fusion occurs when atomic nuclei, which are positively charged, overcome their natural electrostatic repulsion and get close enough for the strong nuclear force to pull them together, forming a new, heavier nucleus and releasing energy. In the Sun, gravity creates immense pressure and temperatures of around 15 million degrees Celsius to force this fusion. On Earth, without that crushing gravitational force, we need to achieve even higher temperatures on the order of 100 million degrees Celsius or more to make the nuclei move fast enough to collide and fuse. At these temperatures, matter exists in a fourth state called plasma, a superheated soup of ions and electrons. The core challenge is confining this scorching plasma long enough and densely enough for a net gain in energy, a state called ignition, where the fusion reactions become self-sustaining. For over half a century, the primary approach has been magnetic confinement. The most famous device is the tokamak, a donut-shaped chamber where powerful superconducting magnets create a twisting magnetic field to contain and isolate the swirling plasma, preventing it from touching and vaporizing the reactor walls. The International ITER project under construction in France is the world's largest and most ambitious tokamak experiment. It is designed to be the first device to achieve a sustained burning plasma, producing 10 times more fusion power than the input power used to heat it. However, ITER is a massive, complex scientific experiment, not a power plant prototype. Its goal is to prove the scientific and engineering feasibility on a large scale. The alternative approach is inertial confinement. Here, instead of using magnets to hold plasma for seconds, the goal is to compress and heat a tiny fuel pellet, typically containing deuterium and tritium, so rapidly and symmetrically that it fuses in a miniature explosion lasting billionths of a second. This is often done by focusing an array of incredibly powerful lasers onto the pellet from all directions. The most famous recent breakthrough came from the National Ignition Facility in the United States. In late 2022 and repeatedly since, NIF reported achieving scientific energy break-even, where the fusion reactions released more energy than the laser energy that directly hit the fuel pellet. This was a historic milestone that proved the fundamental physics principle. It is crucial to note, however, that this does not account for the enormous amount of energy required to power the lasers themselves. The overall system energy gain is still negative. But the symbolic and scientific importance cannot be overstated. It showed that ignition is possible in a laboratory. These two paths, magnetic and inertial, are now being pursued by a vibrant mix of public projects and a surge of private companies. The private fusion sector has exploded with dozens of startups, each with different, sometimes novel, takes on the confinement problem. Some are building smaller, potentially cheaper tokamaks using new high-temperature superconductors for stronger magnets. Others are experimenting with stellarators, another type of magnetic confinement device with a complex twisted design that could theoretically hold plasma more stably than a tokamak. Some companies are pursuing approaches like magnetized target fusion, or even using advanced particle accelerators. This influx of private capital and entrepreneurial agility is accelerating the timeline, fostering innovation, and creating a competitive race to be the first to deliver a net energy fusion system, and ultimately a commercially viable power plant. The engineering hurdles that remain are, to put it mildly, immense. For magnetic confinement, maintaining perfect plasma stability is a constant battle against instabilities and turbulence that can quench the reaction. The materials facing the plasma must withstand not only extreme heat, but also a relentless bombardment of high-energy neutrons, which can make them brittle and radioactive over time. Developing these plasma-facing components is a major materials science challenge. The entire system also needs to breed its own tritium fuel. The concept involves lining the reactor wall with lithium, so the neutrons from the fusion reaction convert the lithium into more tritium, creating a closed fuel cycle. For inertial confinement, the challenge is repetition and efficiency. NIF's achievement is a single-shot experiment. A power plant would need to ignite several of these tiny fusion targets every second, with a high-efficiency laser system, and capture the resulting heat to generate electricity, a monumental engineering feat. Beyond the physics and engineering, the potential impacts of success are world-altering. If fusion energy became cheap, abundant and deployable, it could fundamentally rewrite the global energy landscape. It would provide a constant, reliable baseload power source to complement intermittent renewables like solar and wind, enabling a fully decarbonised electrical grid. The geopolitical implications are profound. Energy security would be transformed, reducing dependence on fossil fuel reserves and the conflicts associated with them. An abundance of cheap, clean energy could power large-scale desalination to address water scarcity, enable direct air capture of carbon dioxide at scale, and provide the immense power needed for advanced industries and perhaps even space exploration. It could elevate the standard of living globally by making energy a negligible cost. However, it is critical to manage expectations and not view fusion as a magical get-out-of-jail-free card for the current climate crisis. Even with accelerated progress, commercial fusion power plants are unlikely to be contributing to the grid at scale before the second half of this century. The urgent task of decarbonisation in the next 2 to 3 decades still relies overwhelmingly on the rapid deployment of existing renewables, nuclear fission, energy storage, and efficiency measures. Fusion is a potential cornerstone for a long-term, sustainable future, not an immediate solution. Furthermore, its development must be accompanied by careful thought about safety, regulation, and non-proliferation. While the inherent safety of fusion is a key advantage, a loss of containment would simply cause the plasma to cool and the reaction to stop instantly. With no risk of a meltdown, the plants will still contain significant radioactive materials from neutron-activated components and tritium inventory. The economics also remain a huge question mark. The first fusion plants will be astronomically expensive. The cost must come down dramatically through innovation and scale to compete with other zero-carbon sources, which will also have improved and become cheaper in the intervening decades. The dream of fusion is ultimately a testament to human ambition. It is the attempt to build a small, contained star on our planet. The recent progress from ITER's steady construction to NIF's ignition and the dynamism of private companies suggests we are entering a new, more promising chapter in this long story. The path is still fraught with monumental technical challenges, but the collective goal is clear: to master this ultimate energy source, not for weapons, but for peaceful abundance. Achieving it would be one of humanity's greatest achievements, offering a powerful tool to ensure a prosperous and sustainable future for generations to come. The work continues in massive concrete halls housing giant magnets and in laser bays the size of sports stadiums, all focused on the same extraordinary objective: bringing the power of the stars down to Earth. Yet, if the dream of fusion is to provide abundant, clean energy for the long term, we are simultaneously confronting the immediate and escalating crisis of climate change with a set of technologies so audacious they border on science fiction. The deliberate, large-scale engineering of Earth's climate system. This field, known broadly as climate engineering or geoengineering, represents a collection of potential interventions to counteract global warming, not by reducing greenhouse gases, but by actively manipulating the planet's physical or chemical processes. It is the stark recognition that emissions reductions may be too slow and that we might need a plan B, a set of emergency brakes or technological patches for our overheating planet. This is arguably the most controversial and ethically fraught domain of applied science, splitting into two fundamentally different categories. The first is carbon dioxide removal, or CDR. The goal here is to directly address the root cause by pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and storing it securely. This is seen by many as a necessary complement to emission cuts, as we have already put so much excess CO2 into the air. Techniques range from the simple and natural to the complex and industrial. Afforestation and reforestation are classic examples, planting vast numbers of trees that naturally absorb CO2 as they grow, but there are limits to available land and the permanence of storage, as forests can burn or be cut down. More technological approaches include bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, where crops are grown, burned for energy, and the resulting CO2 emissions are captured and buried underground. Direct air capture is perhaps the most talked about technological fix. Imagine massive facilities with giant fans pulling air through chemical filters that bind specifically with CO2, which is then concentrated and pumped deep underground into geological formations. Several pilot plants for this exist, but the major hurdle is immense cost and energy consumption. You need a lot of clean energy to run these machines to make a meaningful dent in atmospheric concentrations. Other CDR methods involve enhancing natural carbon sinks. Ocean fertilization proposes adding iron or other nutrients to the ocean surface to stimulate massive blooms of phytoplankton, which absorbs CO2 through photosynthesis. When they die, some would sink to the deep ocean, sequestering the carbon. The ecological side effects, however, are poorly understood and could be severe, disrupting marine food webs and potentially creating dead zones. Enhanced weathering involves grinding up minerals like olivine, spreading them over land or sea, where they naturally react with CO2 and lock it into solid carbonate forms, a process that normally takes millennia, accelerated by human effort. The second and far more alarming category is solar radiation management, or SRM. This does nothing about CO2 levels, instead aims to cool the planet by reflecting a small percentage of incoming sunlight back into space. It is akin to putting the planet under a giant sunshade. The most studied method is stratospheric aerosol injection. The idea is to mimic the cooling effect of large volcanic eruptions, which blast sulfate particles into the stratosphere. These particles reflect sunlight, leading to a temporary global temperature drop. Proposals involve regularly launching a fleet of specialized aircraft to release millions of tons of sulfur dioxide or other reflective particles into the upper atmosphere. The potential appeal is that it could be fast-acting and relatively cheap compared to the scale of the problem. Computer models suggest it could reduce global average temperatures within months or years. However, the risks and unintended consequences are colossal and potentially catastrophic. The first major risk is the termination shock. If we start an SRM program and then stop it abruptly due to political conflict, war, or technological failure, the masked warming would hit the planet all at once, causing temperatures to rocket upwards at a pace far too rapid for ecosystems and societies to adapt. Secondly, it would do nothing to stop ocean acidification, which is driven by the concentration of CO2 itself. The oceans would continue to acidify, devastating marine life. Third and most worrying are the regional climate disruptions. A global sunshade would not cool the planet evenly. It could drastically alter precipitation patterns, potentially causing droughts in some regions, like the Sahel in Africa, which depends on monsoon rains, and floods in others. It could disrupt agricultural cycles globally. The political conflicts arising from such changes could be unimaginable. If one country's geoengineering project ruins another country's harvest, it could be seen as an act of war. This leads directly to the central ethical dilemma known as the moral hazard. The concern is that even serious research into, or discussion of, geoengineering, particularly SRM, could undermine the absolute political and societal necessity to cut emissions at their source. It could provide a false sense of security, a psychological out allowing polluters and governments to say, "Don't worry, technology will fix it later." This could slow down the vital transition to renewable energy and conservation. It is the dangerous idea of a technological fix for a behavioural and systemic problem. Beyond the moral hazard, there are profound questions of justice. The nations most vulnerable to climate change, often low-lying island states or poorer countries in the global south, did the least to cause the crisis. Would they have any say in a decision to deploy a global technology that might save them from sea level rise, but could also destroy their rainfall-dependent agriculture? The governance problem is perhaps the most intractable of all. There is no global institution with the legitimacy, authority and technical capacity to decide whether to deploy these technologies, how to set the planet's thermostat, how to monitor side effects, and how to adjudicate claims for compensation when things go wrong. The existing international frameworks are wholly inadequate. The sheer scale and permanence of the decision are staggering. Unlike any other technology, a decision to deploy SRM would be a decision for all of humanity and all future generations, made by a small group of powerful actors. It creates a free driver problem where a single nation or even a wealthy individual facing an existential climate threat could unilaterally decide to start an SRM program, forcing the rest of the world to live with the consequences. So, where does this leave us? Most scientists argue that research into geoengineering, especially to understand its risks and limitations, is essential precisely because the possibility of a climate emergency or a future unilateral deployment is real. Ignorance is not a safe policy. However, this research must be conducted transparently with international oversight and with a clear understanding that it is for information, not for imminent deployment. The overwhelming consensus is that CDR will be a necessary, if challenging, part of the long-term climate solution to draw down historical emissions. SRM, on the other hand, should be viewed strictly as a potential emergency response, a tool of last resort, fraught with such profound peril that its mere existence as an option changes the geopolitical dynamics of climate change. The debate around geoengineering forces us to confront our relationship with nature at the deepest level. Are we gardeners tending to a planet, or are we pilots taking reckless control of a system we barely understand? It underscores that there are no easy, painless technological escapes from the fundamental problem of too much carbon in the atmosphere. The safest, most just path remains the hardest, rapidly phasing out fossil fuels, transforming our energy systems, and adapting to the changes already locked in. Geoengineering does not replace that urgent work. It exists in its shadow, a sobering reminder of the scale of our failure and the monumental risks we may be forced to consider if that failure continues. The conversation is no longer about if we will manage the Earth system, but how, and with what wisdom and humility we will navigate choices that could determine the fate of civilizations. Building on the theme of large-scale planetary intervention, we now zoom in from the macrocosm of climate systems to the microcosm of life's very building blocks. This is the field of synthetic biology, which takes the principles of engineering, standardization, abstraction, and design, and applies them to biology. It moves beyond merely editing existing genes, as with CRISPR, into the realm of designing and constructing entirely new biological systems and organisms from scratch. Think of it as moving from word processing, where you edit a document, to computer programming, where you write entirely new software. The goal is to use biology as a manufacturing platform, programming living cells to perform specific, useful tasks that they would never do in nature. The foundational tool of this field is DNA synthesis. While reading DNA has become cheap, writing it is also becoming increasingly affordable and fast. Scientists can now design genetic sequences on a computer and have them chemically synthesized in a lab, stringing together the nucleotides in any order they choose. This allows for the creation of custom genes, genetic circuits, and even entire synthetic genomes. A landmark moment came with the synthesis of the first fully synthetic bacterial genome and the creation of a cell controlled by that man-made genome, proving that life can be booted up from digital code. These engineered organisms are often called chassis, like the frame of a car, onto which various genetic parts or modules are installed. These parts are standardized biological components with defined functions, such as promoters that turn genes on, coding sequences for proteins, and terminators that stop the process. By assembling these parts into circuits, researchers can program cells to behave like tiny living machines. The applications are vast and transformative. One of the most significant is in sustainable production. Instead of manufacturing chemicals and materials from petroleum in polluting industrial plants, we can engineer yeast or bacteria to produce them through fermentation. This is already happening on commercial scales for products like artificial sweeteners, flavors, fragrances, and even compounds for cosmetics. The potential extends to biofuels, where engineered microbes could efficiently convert plant waste into advanced biofuels, offering a renewable alternative to fossil fuels. In medicine, synthetic biology enables the production of complex drugs that are difficult or impossible to synthesize chemically. The anti-malarial drug artemisinin is now predominantly produced by yeast, engineered with synthetic pathways, making it more affordable and stable than extraction from plants. Researchers are designing living therapeutics, such as engineered bacteria that can sense inflammation in the gut and produce a therapeutic molecule on site, or smart immune cells programmed to hunt down cancer with greater precision. Another revolutionary application is in cellular agriculture, the production of animal products directly from cells. While cultivated meat involves growing animal muscle cells, synthetic biology can be used to produce the exact proteins, fats, and flavors that make up milk, egg whites, or gelatin through precision fermentation. Companies are using engineered microbes to brew dairy-identical casein and whey proteins without a single cow, creating cheese and yogurt that are molecularly the same as the conventional products, but without the environmental hoofprint. This technology also promises to create new materials with extraordinary properties. Scientists are programming bacteria to produce spider silk proteins, which can be spun into fibers stronger than steel and more flexible than nylon, for use in lightweight armor, medical sutures, and textiles. Other projects aim to grow self-healing concrete, where bacteria are embedded in the material seal cracks, or living paints that can detoxify air pollution. Perhaps the most intellectually radical branch of synthetic biology is xenobiology. This field seeks to create life forms with a biochemistry that is orthogonal to and isolated from natural life. The idea is to build biological systems that use an alternative genetic alphabet. All natural life on Earth uses the same 4 nucleotide bases: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. Xenobiologists have successfully created synthetic base pairs that can be incorporated into DNA and even function in replication and protein synthesis. The goal is to eventually create organisms that use this expanded genetic alphabet to produce proteins built from entirely new, non-natural amino acids. Such organisms would be biologically contained. They would rely on synthetic building blocks not found in nature, so they could not survive outside a lab or industrial vat, addressing some biosafety concerns. They could also perform chemistry impossible for natural organisms, opening doors to new polymers, catalysts, and drugs. However, the power to design life comes with profound risks that demand extreme caution. The foremost concern is biosafety and biosecurity. An engineered organism, whether accidentally released or deliberately weaponized, could have unpredictable ecological consequences. While most engineered microbes for industrial use are deliberately weakened to survive only in specific conditions, the risk of horizontal gene transfer, where engineered genes jump to wild organisms, is a serious area of study. The spectre of bioterrorism also looms. The democratization of DNA synthesis technology, while fostering innovation, could potentially allow bad actors to reconstruct pathogenic viruses or engineer new harmful agents. This has led to rigorous screening of DNA synthesis orders by major companies and ongoing debates about governance. The ethical questions are deep and unsettling. By moving from observation to creation in biology, we are fundamentally altering our relationship with nature. What are the moral responsibilities of creating new life forms, even simple microbial ones, for purely utilitarian purposes? Does life itself become just another form of intellectual property? The ownership and patenting of synthetic organisms and genetic parts raise issues of equity and access, potentially concentrating the power of biological production in the hands of a few corporations. There is also an ecological philosophical concern. Are we further instrumentalizing and commodifying the living world, reducing it to a set of programmable parts? Furthermore, the long-term implications of releasing even well-intentioned synthetic organisms into the environment for bioremediation, like cleaning up oil spills or plastic waste, are unknown and could lead to unintended disruptions in delicate ecosystems. The field therefore operates with a strong emphasis on biocontainment and ethical design. Strategies include engineering kill switches that cause the organism to self-destruct outside its intended environment, or making them dependent on synthetic amino acids not available in nature. The community also promotes responsible innovation through self-governance and engagement with the public. The trajectory of synthetic biology points toward a future where biology is a predictable engineering discipline. This could lead to distributed, localized manufacturing where communities use biofactories to produce medicines, materials, and food tailored to local needs, reducing supply chain dependencies. It could revolutionize medicine with personalized living diagnostics and therapies. It might even allow us to design ecosystems or organisms to help terraform other planets. Yet this future is not automatic. It requires navigating the technical hurdles of complexity. Biological systems are notoriously messy and interconnected, making predictable engineering difficult. It demands robust and adaptive regulatory frameworks that ensure safety without stifling beneficial innovation. Most importantly, it necessitates an inclusive societal dialogue about what we should and should not create. Synthetic biology forces us to confront the very definition of life and our role as its architects. It offers tools that could help solve some of humanity's greatest challenges in health, sustainability, and manufacturing. But it also hands us the blueprints to create problems of a kind we have never faced. The path forward must be walked with humility, a premium on safety, and a clear-eyed focus on steering this incredible creative power toward broadly shared benefits, ensuring that the age of programmable life enhances rather than undermines the natural world and human dignity. Shifting from the virtual worlds we might inhabit, we confront a transformation grounded in the very tangible reality of our daily work and economic survival. This is the wave of radical automation, a force propelled not by a single technology, but by the convergence of advanced robotics, generative artificial intelligence, and integrated cyber-physical systems. We are moving beyond the automation of manual, repetitive factory tasks that began in the 20th century. The new frontier is the automation of cognitive and service labour, of analysis, creativity, and interpersonal interaction. This isn't just about machines replacing human muscle. It's about algorithms and robots replacing human judgment, expertise, and dexterity in a sweeping range of domains. The driving technologies are becoming ubiquitous. In robotics, advances in computer vision, sensor technology, and machine learning are creating robots that can navigate unstructured environments, handle fragile or irregular objects, and learn tasks through demonstration rather than exhaustive programming. These are no longer isolated arms bolted to a car factory floor. They are mobile robots that can walk a warehouse, sort parcels, or even perform complex manual tasks in construction or eldercare. Simultaneously, generative AI, the technology behind large language models and image creators, demonstrates an unprecedented ability to understand, generate, and manipulate human language and other forms of complex data. This makes it capable of automating tasks that were firmly in the domain of educated professionals: writing reports, drafting legal documents, analysing financial markets, creating marketing copy, generating computer code, providing customer support, and even aiding in scientific research and medical diagnosis. When you combine physical robotics with this cognitive automation, you get systems that can see, think, act, and learn in integrated ways. This transformation is already visibly reshaping entire sectors. Transportation stands at the precipice of change with autonomous vehicles. While fully self-driving cars in all conditions remain a challenge, the technology is advancing rapidly in controlled settings, like highway trucking or geo-fenced urban rides. The potential impact on the millions of people who drive for a living, from taxi and delivery drivers to long-haul truckers, is enormous. In logistics and warehousing, automation is a present-day reality. Massive fulfillment centres are increasingly orchestrated symphonies of robotics, where autonomous mobile robots fetch shelves for human pickers, or where robotic arms sort and pack items with superhuman speed and endurance. In retail, self-checkout kiosks are just the beginning. Fully automated stores that track items you take and bill you automatically are already in operation. The service sector, long considered a bastion of human employment, is now in the sights of this wave. Virtual assistants and chatbots, powered by generative AI, are handling increasingly complex customer service interactions, booking appointments and resolving issues. AI is used to screen job applicants, analyse performance, and even manage work schedules. In fields like radiology, AI tools can scan medical images for anomalies, assisting and, in some narrow tasks, potentially surpassing human radiologists in speed and accuracy. In law, AI can perform document discovery and litigation, reviewing millions of pages in a fraction of the time a human team would require. The central economic and social question this poses is the future, or potential end, of work as we know it. Historically, technological innovation has destroyed specific jobs but created new ones in different sectors. The fear today is that this wave of automation may be different in both kind and scale. There is a growing concern about technological unemployment, a structural shift where machines permanently displace human labour faster than the economy can create new, meaningful opportunities for those displaced. The argument is that if AI and robotics can perform both manual and cognitive tasks, what uniquely human roles are left? While new jobs will certainly emerge, in AI oversight, robot maintenance, data science, and fields we cannot yet imagine, they may not emerge in sufficient numbers or be accessible to the displaced workers without significant retraining. This could lead to a dangerous disconnect. Economic productivity and corporate profits could continue to rise due to automation, while wages stagnate and unemployment or underemployment increases for a large segment of the population. This scenario risks exacerbating inequality to unprecedented levels, concentrating wealth in the hands of those who own the capital and intellectual property behind the automated systems. This potential crisis has spurred serious discussion about societal adaptations. The most prominent proposal is the Universal Basic Income, or UBI. The idea is to provide all citizens with a regular, unconditional cash payment sufficient to cover basic living needs. Proponents argue it would act as a cushion, providing economic security in an era of job volatility, empowering people to retrain, care for family, pursue education, or engage in creative or community work without the fear of destitution. It is seen as a way to decouple survival from paid employment and distribute the gains from automation more broadly. Other policy ideas include significantly shortening the work week to share available employment, implementing robust lifelong learning and retraining subsidies, and expanding the social safety net. More controversially, some have proposed taxing robots or the value they create to fund these transitions, though defining and implementing such a tax is complex. Alongside these economic measures, there is a cultural and psychological dimension to consider. For centuries in many societies, work has been central to personal identity, social status, and a sense of purpose. A future with vastly less paid work forces a redefinition of what gives life meaning. It could lead to a renaissance of human flourishing, where people are freed from mundane toil to pursue arts, education, community engagement, caregiving, and personal hobbies, a world of creative leisure. This optimistic view sees automation as finally fulfilling the age-old promise of technology, liberating humanity from drudgery. However, a more pessimistic outlook warns of a crisis of purpose, rising idleness, social alienation, and a loss of dignity for those who find meaning in their professions. The outcome likely depends on how we manage the transition. If the wealth generated by automation is hoarded, we could see a scenario of immense inequality, with a small elite living in luxury while a large, economically redundant population struggles with poverty and despair, potentially leading to severe social unrest. If managed wisely, with policies aimed at broad distribution of benefits and support for alternative life paths, it could lead to a more humane and equitable society. The role of care work, nursing, teaching, childcare, elder care, highlights another critical aspect. These are roles that require empathy, emotional intelligence, and a human touch that is difficult to automate. They are also historically undervalued and underpaid. A future shaped by automation could and should lead to a re-evaluation and elevation of these essential human-centric professions, recognizing them as the core of a healthy society. The path forward is not predetermined. It will be shaped by policy choices, corporate decisions, and cultural values. It requires proactive thinking, not reactive scrambling. We need education systems that foster adaptability, creativity, and emotional skills rather than rote memorization of facts that AI can easily recall. We need labour policies that support transition and provide security. Perhaps most importantly, We need a broad public conversation about what kind of future we want. Do we want a world where efficiency and profit are the sole metrics of success, or one where human well-being, community and purpose are paramount? Radical automation presents not just an economic challenge, but a profound societal inflection point. It forces us to ask fundamental questions about the distribution of wealth, the value of human activity, and the structure of our social contract. The technology itself is neutral. Its impact will be a reflection of our collective choices, wisdom, and capacity to prioritize human dignity in the face of relentless technological change. The goal should not be to resist automation, which would be futile and counterproductive, but to harness its productive potential to build a society where everyone can thrive, whether they engage in traditional paid work or contribute in other equally valuable ways to the human experience. Moving from the societal implications of automated labour, we turn to a more fundamental layer of innovation, the very stuff our world is made of. This is the frontier of programmable materials and four-dimensional printing, where inanimate matter is engineered to be dynamic, responsive, and almost alive. For all of human history, materials have been passive. Wood, stone, metal, and plastic sit there, enduring forces until they break. What if materials could actively respond to their environment? What if a pipe could sense a crack and heal itself, or a building facade could open and close like pine cones to regulate temperature? This is the promise of smart materials, substances engineered to change their shape, properties, or function in a predictable way when exposed to a specific stimulus like heat, light, moisture, electricity, magnetic fields, or even a particular chemical. The mechanisms behind this are fascinating. Shape memory alloys, for instance, can be bent out of shape but will snap back to their original form when heated. This is already used in orthodontic braces, where the gentle, continuous force of the wire trying to return to its shape moves teeth. Another common example is thermochromic pigments, which change colour with temperature, used in mood rings or temperature-sensitive mugs. But the next generation goes far beyond these simple reactions. Researchers are developing materials that can fold, unfold, stiffen, soften, or change their electrical conductivity on command. Hydrogels that swell or shrink dramatically with moisture can act as artificial muscles or sensors. Materials with embedded microcapsules that release a healing agent when cracked are a form of self-repair. The real power comes when you combine these smart materials with advanced manufacturing, leading to the concept of four-dimensional printing. You've heard of three-dimensional printing or additive manufacturing, which builds objects layer by layer from a digital file. Four-dimensional printing adds the dimension of time. It involves three-dimensionally printing objects with smart materials that are programmed to transform their shape or function after the printing process is complete, when exposed to the right trigger. Imagine printing a flat, intricate mesh. When you place it in water, it autonomously folds and assembles into a predetermined three-dimensional shape, like a flower blooming or a cube assembling itself. The programming is embedded in the material structure, the alignment of fibres, the strategic placement of different responsive materials, and the architectural design of the object itself. The fourth dimension is this predictable transformation over time. The applications span from the mundane to the revolutionary. In construction and infrastructure, programmable materials could lead to buildings that adapt to weather. Imagine facade panels that curl to provide shade in the summer sun, or flatten to allow light in during the winter. Bridges embedded with sensors and shape memory alloys could subtly adjust their form to counteract stress from high winds or heavy loads, improving longevity. Self-healing concrete, impregnated with bacteria or polymers that activate when water enters a crack, could drastically reduce maintenance costs and extend the life of critical structures. In medicine, the potential is profound. Stents, small tubes used to prop open arteries, could be printed flat, inserted through a tiny incision, and then expand their functional shape upon contact with body heat. This minimizes invasive surgery. Similarly, programmable scaffolds for tissue engineering could be designed to change their stiffness or porosity over time to guide and support the growth of new tissue, mirroring the natural development process. Drug delivery capsules could be engineered to open only when they sense specific pH levels or enzymes found in a diseased organ, targeting medication with incredible precision. In logistics and product design, four-dimensional printing could revolutionize packaging. A flat-pack container could be triggered by moisture to expand into a protective cushion around a delicate item, or a package could change its shape to indicate if it has been exposed to freezing temperatures during shipping. The concept of products as static, finished objects begins to dissolve. Instead, we move toward a vision where products are the data made physical. You could download a design file, print a basic object, and then have it evolve or upgrade its capabilities later through a software update that triggers new material behaviors. A simple chair could be reprogrammed to change its stiffness or surface texture. A child's toy could transform from one shape into another. This blurs the line between the digital and physical worlds, where software updates can alter not just functionality, but physical form. This brings us to another extraordinary class of materials, metamaterials. These are not defined by their base substance, but by their meticulously engineered internal structure, often at a microscopic or nanoscopic scale. By designing these tiny, repeating architectural features, scientists can create materials with properties not found in nature. The most famous example is the quest for invisibility cloaks. By structuring materials to bend light waves around an object, you could theoretically render it invisible to specific wavelengths. While perfect broad-spectrum invisibility remains elusive, limited cloaking for microwaves or other non-visible wavelengths has been demonstrated. Other metamaterials can act as superlenses, capturing details finer than the wavelength of light, potentially allowing us to see individual viruses with optical microscopes. Some are engineered for acoustic cloaking, diverting sound waves. Others can have a negative refractive index or exhibit unnatural stiffness-to-weight ratios. The potential of programmable materials and metamaterials extends to sustainability, a critical consideration. Adaptive materials can lead to products that last longer because they self-repair or adapt to wear. In architecture, dynamic facades and roofs can significantly reduce a building's energy consumption for heating and cooling. Lightweight, ultra-strong metamaterials can make vehicles and aircraft more fuel-efficient. Perhaps most importantly, the philosophy of four-dimensional printing, creating compact, transformable objects that assemble on demand, could reduce the carbon footprint of shipping and storage. Instead of transporting bulky air-filled products across oceans, we could ship flat, dense sheets that become the product at their destination, saving fuel and packaging waste. However, significant challenges remain. Developing these advanced materials is complex and expensive. Ensuring their long-term reliability and durability is crucial, especially for critical applications in aerospace or medicine. The recycling and end-of-life disposal of composite smart materials, which may blend polymers, metals and responsive chemicals, present a new environmental puzzle. Furthermore, the software and design tools needed to model and simulate these time-dependent transformations are themselves cutting-edge fields of research. The security implications of programmable matter also warrant consideration. If physical objects are controlled by software, they become vulnerable to hacking in new and tangible ways. The trajectory, however, is clear. We are progressing from crafting materials to programming matter. This represents a paradigm shift in engineering, design, and manufacturing. It moves us toward a world where our environment is not static but interactive and responsive, capable of healing, adapting, and serving us in more intelligent ways. It is a quiet revolution happening at the molecular and structural level, one that will eventually reshape the objects in our homes, the vehicles we travel in, the buildings we inhabit, and the medical devices that heal us. The convergence of materials, science, robotics, and computation is giving rise to a new generation of matter that bridges the gap between the inert world and the living, responsive one, promising a future where the line between the made and the born becomes increasingly and fascinatingly blurred. Building upon the theme of programming matter and creating responsive materials, we now turn to one of the most fundamental applications of such biological and chemical engineering: the food we eat. This is the emerging realm of cellular agriculture and synthetic foods, a radical departure from traditional farming and animal husbandry. It asks a provocative question: what if we could produce real meat, dairy, and other animal products without the animal itself? This isn't about plant-based substitutes like veggie burgers or almond milk, which have been around for years. This is about creating biologically identical products through cellular and microbial processes, decoupling food production from the constraints of land, climate, and animal welfare. The most prominent branch of this field is cultivated meat, also called lab-grown or cell-based meat. The process begins with a harmless biopsy from a living animal collecting a small sample of muscle stem cells. These cells are then placed in a bioreactor, essentially a sophisticated fermentation tank, and provided with a nutrient-rich broth called a growth medium. This medium contains the amino acids, sugars, vitamins and minerals the cells need to proliferate, just as they would inside an animal's body. Through careful control of temperature, oxygen levels and mechanical or biochemical cues, the cells are encouraged to multiply and differentiate into muscle fibers and fat cells. Over time, these cells grow into tissue that can be harvested, structured, and prepared as minced meat for burgers, nuggets, or with more advanced scaffolding techniques, eventually into structured cuts like steaks or chicken breasts. The end product is, at a cellular level, identical to conventional meat because it is in fact real animal muscle tissue. It just never was part of a sentient, walking, breathing creature. The parallel track to cultivated meat is precision fermentation. This technology uses microorganisms, yeast, fungi or bacteria, as tiny programmable factories. Scientists insert specific genes into these microbes, instructing them to produce desired organic molecules as they ferment. This is not new. We have used genetically engineered yeast to produce the human insulin for decades, and rennet for cheese making for years. The leap now is in scale and ambition. Companies are using precision fermentation to produce the key functional proteins that define animal products. For example, the casein and whey proteins that give dairy milk its nutritional profile, creamy texture, and ability to melt and stretch in cheese can be brewed by microbes. The resulting proteins are purified and used as ingredients to create milk, cheese, yogurt, and ice cream that are molecularly identical to their cow-derived counterparts, but produced in a facility more akin to a brewery than a farm. The same approach is being used to create egg white proteins, collagen, gelatin, and even the complex flavours and fats that make meat taste like meat. The potential benefits of shifting to these production methods are staggering, particularly for the environment. Conventional animal agriculture is a leading driver of deforestation, biodiversity loss, freshwater use, and greenhouse gas emissions. Livestock farming accounts for a significant percentage of global methane and nitrous oxide emissions, potent greenhouse gases. It is also incredibly land inefficient, requiring vast tracts for grazing and growing feed crops. Cellular agriculture promises to drastically reduce this footprint. Life cycle assessments suggest cultivated meat could, at scale, use over 90% less land and water, and produce far lower greenhouse gas emissions than conventional beef. It would eliminate the need for slaughterhouses and reduce the risk of zoonotic diseases and antibiotic resistance associated with intensive farming. For a growing global population with an increasing appetite for protein, these technologies could be crucial for food security, allowing production to be localized in urban areas or regions with poor soil, independent of climate. The ethical implications are equally profound. For consumers who are uncomfortable with the industrial slaughter of animals but still desire the taste and nutrition of meat, cultivated products offer a compelling alternative. It could significantly reduce, though not eliminate, the number of animals raised and killed for food, addressing major concerns about animal welfare. However, the path from scientific promise to supermarket shelf is lined with formidable challenges. The first is cost and scale. The initial prototype hamburger grown in a lab over a decade ago cost over $300,000 to produce. Since then, costs have plummeted into the range of tens of dollars per pound for some products, thanks to innovations in growth media formulation and bioreactor design. The growth medium, particularly the cost of the growth factors needed to cue cell differentiation, remains a major expense. Scaling up from small pilot bioreactors to the industrial scale volumes needed to feed cities is a monumental engineering challenge, requiring advances in bioprocessing that mirror the scaling of other fermentation industries. The second hurdle is regulatory approval. Governments worldwide are developing frameworks to ensure these novel foods are safe for consumption. Agencies like the Food and Drug Administration and the Department of Agriculture in the United States have begun granting approvals for cultivated chicken products, setting a precedent. A clear, science-based regulatory pathway is essential for consumer confidence and industry investment. The third and perhaps most significant challenge is consumer acceptance. The yuck factor, or the perception that these foods are unnatural or processed is a major psychological barrier. Marketing and branding will play a huge role. Terms like cultivated or brewed may be more palatable than lab-grown. Transparency about the production process, its benefits and its safety will be critical. Taste, texture and price parity with conventional products are the ultimate arbiters. If a cultivated steak is cheaper, tastier and indistinguishable from a traditional one, acceptance will follow. Cultural and social dimensions run deep. Food is not just fuel, it is tied to tradition, identity and ritual. Will a synthetic steak carry the same cultural weight as one from a ranch? Can synthetic cheese satisfy the terroir and craftsmanship associated with centuries-old dairy traditions? These technologies may force a redefinition of what we consider natural and real food. They also raise questions about the future of rural communities and farmers whose livelihoods are tied to traditional agriculture. A just transition for these communities must be part of the conversation. Furthermore, the concentration of food production in high-tech bioreactor facilities owned by a few large companies could raise concerns about economic resilience and equity, mirroring issues in other industrialized food sectors. Looking forward, the impact could extend beyond mimicking existing foods. Scientists could design better-than-nature foods, meat with optimized nutritional profiles such as enhanced omega-3 fatty acids or reduced saturated fat. They could create entirely new food experiences, textures and flavors not possible in the animal kingdom. This could revolutionize space exploration, providing sustainable food for long-duration missions where traditional agriculture is impossible. In the near term, hybrid products that blend plant-based ingredients with cultivated fat or fermented proteins are likely to be the first widely available, offering improved taste and lowering costs. The journey of cellular agriculture and synthetic foods is a testament to applying biotechnology to one of humanity's oldest needs. It confronts the immense environmental and ethical costs of our current food system with a daring technological proposition. Its success is not guaranteed. It will depend on continued scientific innovation, astute regulatory oversight, smart marketing, and ultimately the choices of millions of consumers at the dinner table. It represents a potential fork in the road for our species' relationship with food, moving from hunting and herding to farming, and now to brewing and cultivating. Whether this future is one of sterile labs disconnecting us from nature, or of elegant solutions allowing us to enjoy the foods we love while healing the planet, will depend on how wisely and inclusively we navigate this delicious and contentious revolution. From the prospect of brewing food in bioreactors on Earth, we lift our gaze to an even more expansive and audacious endeavour, securing a future for humanity beyond our home planet. This is the long-term vision of space exploration and colonisation, the quest to become a multiplanetary species. It is a technological challenge that dwarfs all others, requiring us to reinvent the fundamentals of life support, propulsion, and industry in the most hostile environments imaginable. The goal is not just to visit space, but to live there permanently, and that demands a suite of technologies far beyond the rockets that get us there. Reusable launch systems, like those pioneered by private companies, have already dramatically reduced the cost of reaching orbit, but they are just the first step. The real work begins after arrival. One of the most critical barriers is propulsion. Chemical rockets, while powerful for launch, are terribly inefficient for the long voyages between planets due to their need to carry immense amounts of fuel. For sustained human presence, we need advanced propulsion systems that offer higher speeds and greater fuel efficiency. Nuclear thermal propulsion uses a fission reactor to heat a propellant like liquid hydrogen, expelling it at much higher speeds than chemical combustion, potentially cutting the travel time to Mars by half. An even more advanced concept is nuclear electric propulsion, which uses a reactor to generate electricity that ionizes and accelerates a propellant like xenon, providing a gentle but continuous thrust for very long durations, ideal for cargo missions. These technologies, while complex, are within our engineering understanding and could be developed within decades. Upon reaching a destination like the Moon or Mars, survival depends on habitats that are not just shelters, but closed, self-sustaining ecological systems. These must provide all the necessities of life: air, water, food, and a stable environment, while recycling waste with incredible efficiency. Early habitats will likely be prefabricated modules sent from Earth or constructed using inflatable technologies. The next evolutionary step is in situ resource utilization, or ISRU, which is the cornerstone of sustainable colonization. The idea is to live off the land, using local materials to meet needs. On the Moon or Mars, this means extracting water ice from permanently shadowed craters or the soil. This water is life itself, for drinking, growing food, and when split into hydrogen and oxygen, for breathable air and rocket fuel. The regolith, the dusty soil covering these worlds, can be processed into building materials. Three-dimensional printing using regolith as a feedstock could allow colonists to construct radiation-shielded habitats, garages and landing pads without transporting billions of tons of concrete from Earth. Experiments on Earth have already demonstrated the feasibility of sintering regolith simulant into solid, durable structures using focused solar energy or microwaves. Perhaps the most daunting challenges are those posed to human biology itself. The space environment is relentlessly hostile. Beyond Earth's protective magnetosphere, astronauts are bombarded by cosmic rays and solar particle events, high-energy radiation that increases cancer risk and can cause acute radiation sickness. Shielding is a massive technical problem requiring thick layers of material, water, or even creative magnetic shields. Then there is microgravity. The human body evolved for Earth's gravity. Prolonged exposure to weightlessness leads to muscle atrophy, bone density loss, cardiovascular deconditioning, and vision problems. Artificial gravity, created by rotating a spacecraft or habitat to generate centrifugal force, is a potential solution, but engineering such large rotating structures is non-trivial. Furthermore, the psychological toll of confinement, isolation, and distance from Earth, with communication delays of up to 20 minutes each way to Mars, poses a profound risk to crew cohesion and mental health. Countermeasures will include rigorous exercise regimes, advanced medical monitoring, virtual reality for mental escape, and careful crew selection and support. Robots and automation will be the indispensable vanguard and companions for human settlers. Autonomous rovers will scout terrain and locate resources. Robotic construction equipment will prepare sites and assemble structures before humans arrive. Telepresence robots, operated from Earth or a nearby habitat, will allow for delicate scientific work or repairs in dangerous areas without exposing humans. The role of advanced manufacturing, particularly three-dimensional printing, cannot be overstated. The ability to manufacture tools, spare parts, and even complex machinery on demand from local or recycled materials will be the difference between a resilient colony and a fatally fragile outpost. All of this ambition leads to the question of economics. What would a sustainable, growing space economy look like? In the near term, it might be driven by science, tourism, and perhaps government prestige. But for true expansion, economic drivers are needed. One often cited possibility is asteroid mining. Certain asteroids are rich in platinum group metals, rare earth elements, and even water. Mining these resources for use in space, water for fuel depots, metals for in-space construction, could create an off-world industrial base. The extreme cost of launching material from Earth's gravity well makes the use of space resources economically attractive for building things in space, even if sending those materials back to Earth is not immediately viable. Other models include space-based solar power, where vast satellites collect sunlight in space and beam energy wirelessly to Earth, or manufacturing facilities that leverage the unique properties of microgravity to produce superior fiber optics, pharmaceuticals, or alloys. The philosophical and governance implications of becoming a multiplanetary species are profound. Establishing permanent settlements on other worlds forces us to consider what laws will govern them. Will they be extensions of terrestrial nations, or will they develop their own independent social and political structures? The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 provides a foundational framework, declaring space the province of all humanity and forbidding national appropriation, but it is silent on the details of private property rights or governance for a Martian city. New treaties and norms will need to be developed to manage resource extraction, environmental protection of other worlds, planetary protection, and conflict resolution. Becoming a spacefaring civilization also offers a powerful answer to existential risk. By establishing independent, self-sustaining communities on other worlds, humanity would ensure that a catastrophe on Earth, whether natural or self-inflicted, would not mean the end of our species and our collective knowledge. This is the ultimate argument for the endeavour, to safeguard the light of consciousness. It is a long-term insurance policy for life and civilization. The journey will be generations long, immeasurably difficult, and staggeringly expensive. It will require unprecedented international and private sector cooperation. There will be failures and sacrifices. Yet the technologies developed along the way, and closed-loop life support, advanced propulsion, resource-efficient manufacturing and radiation shielding, are likely to yield transformative benefits on Earth, helping us manage our resources more wisely and live more sustainably. The path to the stars is not an escape from Earth's problems, but a catalyst for solving them through focused ambition and innovation. It begins with the next steps, establishing a sustained presence on the Moon as a proving ground, then taking the leap to the ruddy plains of Mars. Each small step in this grand architecture builds the capability and confidence for the next. The vision is not of abandoning Earth, but of extending the reach of life, ensuring that humanity's story is not a single, solitary chapter confined to one fragile world, but an epic that spans across the solar system and perhaps, one day, beyond. From the grand vision of extending humanity's reach across the cosmos, we return to the most intimate frontier of all, the inner workings of the human body and the fundamental process of aging itself. This is the rapidly advancing field of cellular and immunological therapies that aim not just to treat diseases, but to repair the underlying mechanisms of aging, potentially extending our period of healthy life. It is a shift from reactive medicine, where we wait for sickness to strike, to proactive and even preemptive intervention at the molecular and cellular level. The ultimate goal is to increase health span, the number of years lived in good health, rather than simply extending the total lifespan marked by decline and disease. This approach reframes aging not as an inevitable fact of life, but as a malleable biological process composed of specific, addressable hallmarks. One of the most powerful and already established applications of this principle is in advanced immunotherapies for cancer. Traditional treatments like chemotherapy and radiation are like carpet bombs, attacking all rapidly dividing cells. Immunotherapy, by contrast, is a precision-guided strategy that empowers the body's own immune system. Two major breakthroughs are checkpoint inhibitors and CAR T cell therapy. Checkpoint inhibitors work by releasing the natural brakes on immune cells, allowing them to recognize and attack cancer cells that were previously invisible to them. This has led to remarkable long-lasting remissions in cancers like melanoma and lung cancer. CAR T therapy is even more personalized. It involves extracting a patient's own T cells, genetically engineering them in a lab to express chimeric antigen receptors that target specific proteins on the surface of their cancer cells, and then infusing these supercharged cells back into the patient. These living drugs have shown extraordinary success against certain blood cancers, effectively curing some patients for whom all other options had failed. The frontier now is to make these therapies work for more solid tumours and to manage their potentially severe side effects. But the vision extends far beyond cancer. Researchers are targeting the foundational pillars of aging itself. One key target is cellular senescence. As we age, our tissues accumulate senescent cells, often called zombie cells. These are cells that have stopped dividing due to damage or stress but refuse to die. Instead, they linger, secreting a harmful mix of inflammatory signals and other molecules that poison their neighbours, drive chronic low-grade inflammation, and disrupt tissue function. This process is a major contributor to many age-related conditions, from osteoarthritis to atherosclerosis. The emerging solution is a class of drugs called senolytics. These compounds are designed to selectively induce apoptosis, or programmed cell death, in these senescent cells, clearing them out while leaving healthiest cells untouched. In animal studies, senolytic treatments have been shown to rejuvenate tissues, improve physical function, and delay the onset of multiple age-related diseases. Early human trials are underway for conditions like idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis and diabetic kidney disease, with the hope of periodically clearing these cells to maintain tissue health. Another fundamental aging mechanism involves telomeres, the protective caps at the ends of our chromosomes that shorten each time a cell divides. This shortening acts as a molecular clock, and when telomeres become too short, cells enter senescence or die. The enzyme telomerase can rebuild telomeres. While indiscriminate activation of telomerase is dangerous and can promote cancer, carefully targeted strategies to maintain telomere length in specific stem cell populations are a promising area of research, aiming to preserve the regenerative capacity of our tissues. Epigenetics represents another profound layer of aging control. The epigenome is the complex system of chemical tags and proteins that wraps around DNA, controlling which genes are switched on or off without changing the genetic code itself. As we age, this epigenetic landscape becomes distorted, leading to cells expressing the wrong genes and losing their identity and function. This is called epigenetic drift. The revolutionary concept of epigenetic reprogramming asks, can we reset this aging clock? Groundbreaking experiments have shown that introducing a specific set of proteins known as Yamanaka factors can reprogram adult cells back into an embryonic-like pluripotent state, effectively erasing their age. The challenge, of course, is doing this safely in a living organism without causing cancer or losing cellular identity. Remarkable recent studies in mice have demonstrated that partial transient reprogramming can restore youthful epigenetic patterns, improve organ function, and even extend lifespan, offering a tantalizing glimpse of a future where we might periodically reset our biological age. Nutrient-sensing pathways are also central to aging. These are biological circuits, like those involving insulin, IGF-1, and a protein called mTOR, that evolved to help organisms survive periods of scarcity. When nutrient intake is low, these pathways shift the body's focus from growth and reproduction to maintenance and repair. This is the basis for the well-documented lifespan extending effects of caloric restriction in many species. Scientists are now developing pharmacological mimics of these effects. The drug rapamycin, an inhibitor of the mTOR pathway, has been shown to extend lifespan in mice and is being investigated for its effects on health span in dogs and humans. Metformin, a common diabetes drug, is the subject of a major clinical trial called TAME, which aims to see if it can delay the onset of multiple age-related diseases in non-diabetic older adults. These geroprotectors aim to tune our metabolism toward a state of enhanced maintenance and resilience. All of this converges on a paradigm-shifting idea, treating aging itself as a medical condition. This is not merely philosophical, it has practical implications for how drugs are developed and approved. If regulatory agencies recognize aging as a treatable condition, it would pave the way for therapies that target its root causes, with endpoints measured as a composite of age-related diseases, frailty and mortality. This could transform healthcare from a fragmented system treating one disease at a time to an integrated model focused on preserving systemic health. The potential societal benefits are immense. Extending health span could mean decades of additional productive, independent life, reducing the immense personal and economic burden of age-related disability and chronic care. However, this future raises profound ethical and social questions that we must confront. The first and most urgent is equity and access. Will these advanced, likely expensive therapies be available only to the wealthy, creating a biological caste system with unprecedented inequality in lifespan and health? This could exacerbate social divisions to a degree never seen before. The second concern involves demographics and sustainability. If people live much longer, healthier lives without a corresponding decrease in birth rates, it could strain pension systems, healthcare resources and housing, though proponents argue that a longer health span could allow people to work longer and contribute more, and that technological advances in other fields could address resource issues. The third set of questions touches on the meaning of life, identity and society. Our cultures, career paths, family structures and psychological expectations are built around a traditional human lifespan. What happens when that script is rewritten? Could longer lives lead to greater wisdom and innovation, or to societal stagnation, intergenerational conflict, and a crisis of purpose? The concept of a natural human lifespan would be permanently altered. Navigating this future will require more than scientific breakthroughs. It demands robust, inclusive public dialogue, adaptive regulatory frameworks, and a steadfast commitment to equitable access. The goal of this research is not the pursuit of immortality, a concept fraught with philosophical and practical problems, but the compression of morbidity, shortening the period of illness and decline at the end of life so that most of our years are lived in vitality. It is about adding life to years, not just years to life. As we stand on the precipice of potentially gaining unprecedented control over our own biology, we must steer this power with wisdom, foresight, and a deep commitment to the collective good, ensuring that the gift of longer health becomes a blessing for all of humanity, not a privilege for a few. While extending the health span of individuals is a profound pursuit, so too is enhancing the health and efficiency of the collective systems we live within. This brings us to the evolution of urban environments into smart cities and autonomous infrastructures, where the integration of data, sensors, and artificial intelligence transforms static concrete jungles into adaptive, almost living organisms. The vision is a city that doesn't just exist, but perceives, thinks, and responds in real time, optimizing itself for sustainability, efficiency, and the well-being of its inhabitants. This transformation is driven by the convergence of several key technologies. The foundational layer is the Internet of Things, a vast network of interconnected sensors embedded throughout the urban fabric. These sensors are the city's nerve endings, constantly monitoring a staggering array of metrics: traffic volume and flow on every street, air quality and pollution levels in each neighbourhood, energy consumption patterns across the grid, water pressure and quality in the pipes, fill levels in waste bins, noise levels, pedestrian footfall, and even the structural integrity of bridges and buildings. This relentless stream of raw data is the lifeblood of the smart city, but data alone is just noise. The brain of the operation is the suite of artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms that process this information, identify patterns, predict trends, and make autonomous decisions. This enables a shift from reactive management, sending a crew to fix a water main after it bursts, to proactive and predictive governance, anticipating the failure based on pressure sensors and scheduling maintenance before it happens. One of the most tangible and impactful applications is in transportation and mobility. The smart city envisions a seamlessly integrated multimodal transportation network. Smart traffic lights communicate with each other and with vehicles, dynamically adjusting signal timing to smooth traffic flow, reduce idling, and cut emissions. Connected and autonomous vehicles, from personal cars to shared shuttles and delivery bots, navigate this optimized grid, communicating to avoid collisions and congestion. Public transit becomes adaptive. Buses can adjust their routes in real time based on passenger demand detected from smartphone data or ticket scans, while autonomous trains run with perfect efficiency. The entire system is designed to minimize commute times, eliminate traffic fatalities caused by human error, and reduce the need for private car ownership, thereby freeing up vast tracts of land currently dedicated to parking for parks, housing, or commercial space. The benefits extend deeply into energy management through smart grids. These are electricity networks that use digital communication to detect and react to local changes in usage. They can integrate fluctuating renewable sources like solar and wind more effectively, automatically balance supply and demand to prevent blackouts, and even allow for two-way communication with homes. In a smart grid, your dishwasher might receive a signal to run when electricity is cheapest and most abundant, or your electric vehicle could sell power back to the grid during peak demand. This creates a resilient, efficient, and cleaner energy system. Resource management is similarly revolutionized. Smart water systems with pressure and acoustic sensors can pinpoint leaks instantly, conserving millions of gallons. Waste management trucks follow optimized routes generated by sensors and trash cans that signal when they are full, reducing fuel use and operational costs. Buildings become active participants, not passive containers. Equipped with their own sensor networks, smart buildings automatically adjust heating, cooling, and lighting based on occupancy and weather forecasts, slashing energy bills and carbon footprints. They can even communicate with the grid to reduce their load during periods of high demand. Public safety and civic maintenance are enhanced through pervasive sensing. Networks of cameras and acoustic sensors can help first responders locate the scene of a gunshot or a car accident instantly. Sensors monitoring bridge vibrations or building tilt can provide early warning of structural issues. Environmental monitoring gives public health officials real-time data on pollution hotspots or conditions conducive to disease outbreaks, enabling targeted interventions. However, this hyper-connected, data-drenched vision comes with monumental risks that must be addressed with the same vigour as the technological challenges. The foremost concern is the erosion of privacy in the spectre of mass surveillance. A city that sees and hears everything is a potent tool for control. The same network that optimizes traffic flow can track every individual's movement, associations, and routines. Who owns this data? How long is it stored? Who has access to it? Could it be used by governments for social scoring or by corporations for predatory advertising? Without strong legal frameworks and technological safeguards for anonymity and data ownership, the smart city risks becoming a panopticon where citizens trade their privacy for efficiency. The second major risk is cybersecurity and systemic vulnerability. A city whose critical functions, power, water, transportation, are controlled by centralized software is a high-value target for hostile state actors, criminal hackers, or terrorists. A successful cyber attack could plunge a metropolis into darkness, paralyze its hospitals, or cripple its logistics. Building robust, decentralized, and resilient cybersecurity defenses is not an optional feature. It is the absolute prerequisite for any smart city initiative. The third critical issue is equity and the digital divide. There is a danger that the benefits of smart city technologies will accrue first and most abundantly to wealthy districts and tech-savvy populations, exacerbating existing social and economic inequalities. If an algorithm directs more police resources to high-risk areas based on historical data, it may reinforce biased policing. If dynamic pricing for congestion zones or parking unfairly burdens lower-income residents, it creates a two-tiered city. The design and deployment of these systems must be guided by principles of equity, inclusion, and accessibility from the very beginning, with active community engagement to ensure they serve all citizens, not just a privileged few. This leads to the overarching question of governance and democratic accountability. In a smart city, who governs the algorithms that govern us? The decisions about traffic patterns, resource allocation, and public space use are increasingly made by opaque software. If these algorithms are designed by private tech companies and operated as black boxes, citizens have no recourse to understand or challenge decisions that affect their daily lives. There is a pressing need for algorithmic transparency, public oversight, and ethical review boards to audit these systems for bias and fairness. The goal must be to use technology to enhance democratic participation, not to replace it. Citizens should be able to interact with their city through digital platforms, report issues, access data, and co-create solutions, moving from being mere data points to active stakeholders. The future of urban life, therefore, hinges not just on technological prowess, but on societal choices. The smart city is not an inevitable destiny. It is a canvas upon which we project our values. Do we want cities that are efficient but sterile, controlled but soulless? Or can we harness these tools to create cities that are not only intelligent, but also humane, sustainable, and just? The ultimate test of a smart city will not be its processing power or sensor density, but its ability to foster community, ensure dignity, and expand freedom for every person who calls it home. The infrastructure of the future must be built with a foundation of ethical code as strong as its physical code, ensuring that the city that thinks also cares. As we consider the vast computational networks that would power smart cities and their pervasive artificial intelligence, we must also re-examine the very hardware running those calculations. This brings us to a radical alternative to the classical computing architecture that has dominated for decades: neuromorphic computing, a field dedicated to building computer chips inspired by the human brain itself. It is an attempt to move beyond the limitations of the traditional von Neumann architecture, where the processor and memory are separate units, constantly shuttling data back and forth over a bottleneck known as the von Neumann bottleneck. This constant traffic consumes enormous energy and creates a fundamental speed limit, especially for tasks involving pattern recognition and real-time sensory processing. The brain, in stark contrast, operates on a completely different principle. It uses a massively parallel network of roughly 86 billion neurons, connected by synapses that both process and store information locally. This fusion of memory and computation is incredibly energy efficient, allowing the brain to perform astonishing feats of perception and cognition while consuming only about 20 watts of power, less than a standard light bulb. Neuromorphic engineering seeks to mimic this biological blueprint in silicon. The goal is not to simulate a brain in software on conventional hardware, which is what most neural networks do today, but to physically embody brain-like structures in hardware. The core components of a neuromorphic chip are artificial neurons and synapses. Instead of standard transistors that represent ones and zeros, these chips use novel electronic components to emulate the behavior of their biological counterparts. A key innovation here is the memristore, a circuit element whose electrical resistance depends on the histories of voltage applied to it. This property allows it to behave like a biological synapse. The strength of the connection between artificial neurons can be strengthened or weakened based on the timing of electrical signals, mimicking the brain's synaptic plasticity, which is the basis of learning and memory. In a neuromorphic system, information is often encoded in the timing of spikes, much like the pulses or action potentials used by biological neurons. This spiking neural network architecture is event-driven. Components only consume power when they send or receive a spike, leading to extraordinary gains in energy efficiency, especially for sparse, real-world data. This stands in sharp contrast to most contemporary AI, which runs on graphics processing units and tensor processing units in massive data centers. These systems are incredibly powerful for training large models on vast data sets, but they are also energy hungry and operate in a fundamentally sequential, batch processing manner. They're excellent at crunching numbers but lack the brain's innate efficiency for real-time adaptive learning from a continuous stream of noisy sensory input. Neuromorphic chips aim to fill this gap. Their promise lies in enabling a new class of devices that can process information intelligently at the very edge of the network, right where data is generated, without needing constant communication with the cloud. This is critical for applications where latency, power, and bandwidth are paramount. Imagine autonomous robots that need to navigate a chaotic environment in real time. A neuromorphic vision sensor and processor could allow it to perceive motion, recognize objects, and make decisions with millisecond latency and minimal power draw, enabling more agile and independent operation. Similarly, wearable health monitors with neuromorphic chips could analyze heart rate, gait, and other biomarkers continuously, spotting anomalies in real time and providing personalized feedback without draining the battery or compromising user privacy by sending raw data to the cloud. The Internet of Things could be transformed by sensors that pre-process and interpret data locally, sending only meaningful insights instead of endless raw streams, conserving bandwidth and energy. The field also holds promise for advancing artificial intelligence itself, moving toward what some call cognitive computing. Current AI, for all its prowess, is often brittle, requiring massive retraining for new tasks and struggling with context and common sense. Neuromorphic systems, with their inherent ability for online lifelong learning via synaptic plasticity, could lead to machines that learn continuously and adaptively from their experiences, more like a living organism. They might handle ambiguity and novel situations with greater robustness, integrating multiple sensory modalities, sight, sound, touch, into a cohesive understanding of the world in a way that feels more natural and less programmed. This could be pivotal for creating more capable and intuitive human and machine interfaces, advanced prosthetics, or AI assistants that truly understand context. However, it is crucial to temper expectations and clarify what neuromorphic computing is not. It is not a magic shortcut to artificial general intelligence or consciousness. The brain's complexity is staggering, and we are replicating only its most basic organizational principles at a vastly simplified scale. These chips are not necessarily intended to replace traditional CPUs and GPUs for all tasks. They are specialized accelerators for specific types of problems, particularly those involving real-time sensory processing, pattern recognition in streaming data, and low-power embedded intelligence. The von Neumann architecture is still supremely efficient for the logical, serial tasks that constitute most of traditional computing. The two paradigms are likely to coexist in hybrid systems. The development path is filled with significant hurdles. Designing and manufacturing reliable large-scale arrays of artificial neurons and synapses is a formidable materials science and engineering challenge. Programming these spiking neural networks is fundamentally different from writing conventional software. It requires new tools, languages, and algorithms. The community is still working to identify the killer applications that will definitively prove the technology's commercial advantage beyond research labs. Furthermore, as with all brain-inspired technology, it forces us to confront profound questions. If we successfully create hardware that operates on brain-like principles, does that teach us anything new about the nature of our own minds? Could such systems, by virtue of their architectural similarity, develop forms of machine intelligence that are more aligned with organic intelligence, perhaps more predictable or transparent? Or is this simply a clever engineering trick to build more efficient, specialized accelerators with no deeper implications for creating a conscious machine? The answer likely lies somewhere in between. Neuromorphic computing is primarily a hardware revolution aimed at efficiency and capability, not necessarily a direct path to artificial consciousness. Yet, by building systems that operate on principles of parallelism, event-driven computation, and synaptic plasticity, we're undoubtedly creating a form of machine intelligence that is more context-aware, adaptive, and resilient than what runs on today's hardware. In the broader technological landscape, it represents a necessary evolution. As we push more and more intelligence to the edge, into phones, cars, appliances, and sensors, the energy and efficiency of conventional AI becomes a critical bottleneck. Neuromorphic chips offer a compelling path forward, promising to make sophisticated AI ubiquitous and sustainable. They could enable a future where intelligent processing is woven into the fabric of our environment, functioning as unobtrusively and efficiently as the human nervous system. The pursuit of this technology is a testament to looking to nature for solutions, recognizing that 3.5 billion years of evolution have produced a computational marvel that we're only beginning to understand, let alone replicate. It is a long-term research endeavor with the potential to redefine the relationship between hardware and intelligence, creating machines that don't just calculate but perceive and learn in ways that feel, for the first time, authentically responsive to the dynamic world they inhabit.